finances with rising costs in all areas of our life. We're going to discuss the various ways how we can manage our finances better, and what better guest to have than our resident financial advisor. Thank you so much once again for joining us, brother.
No problem.
So, to kick off the show, we're in this worldwide economic crisis at the moment, Shaba, and there's rises everywhere, from petrol, gas prices, electricity, food, you know, just the stuff that we use and consume in our daily crisis. Can I start by asking, do you understand what may have caused this economic upturn?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. We're in a bit of a financial storm at the moment, and so not wanting to sort of like bore like the viewers with like what's happened, because we kind of know what's happened and we see the events that have unfolded, and they've just led to a series of sort of chain reactions that has resulted in this period now, which is dominated by high prices and now high interest rates.
Yeah.
So essentially what's happened is we've had a period where we had COVID.
Yes.
And what happened during COVID was people didn't spend as much, right? So we were all at home.
Yes.
And we were quite fortunate that this government was giving out, you know, quite large sums of money in
grants and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the furlough scheme, you know, there was bounce back loans, CBILS loans, all of these things that were being given out quite handsomely by the Chancellor.
Yes.
And quite often it wasn't actually going to the people that really needed it. So what you had is a lot of money sort of flying around, and that basically means that people that weren't spending were sort of hoarding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, or even managing to save. And then off the back of COVID sort of coming and the world opening up, people then had cash to go out, and it's almost like, you know, when a caged animal, you know, is let out
and released.
And so then you had a lot of money chasing fewer goods. And the reason why there were fewer goods is because you'd have heard there's sort of supply chain issues, because obviously during COVID things across the world slowed down in terms of manufacturing and output, etc. So when big like Chinese cities, you know, are closed down and they were far stricter with their lockdown rules, you know, that creates sort of supply chain knock-on effects, which means goods aren't arriving, so there's not enough goods, and people have got a lot of money, so it just naturally pushes prices up. So you had that kind of a scenario, which wasn't great. And then now we've also got this rising interest rates, which obviously is not ideal, but then we've been in a period of very, very low interest rates for over a decade. Since
I understand it's sort of been at 0%.
0.1%, for, you know, for many years, since the great financial crisis back in 2008, 2009, when, you know, the banking system, they say, almost collapsed, but you know, banks were being bailed out.
Yes.
So, you know, post that period, we've had 13 years of pretty good going in terms of low interest rates. So borrowing's been cheap. There's been quantitative easing, which is just basically the government printing money.
Okay.
Yeah, which has meant that there's been, you know, an excess of cheap money. People have been able to borrow, and we've seen, you know, stock markets have a really good period. Yeah. And inevitably you have downturns. So what we're experiencing is nothing new that hasn't been seen before.
Yes.
Maybe the rates of inflation of like 10% we've not seen.
Yes.
But, you know, you go back to previous decades in the 70s and beyond that, you'd have had periods of high inflation. Yeah. So we've got this kind of big storm, and then you've got the Ukraine Russia conflict, which has added an even more dimension to it, because that's driven up, you know, wholesale, you know, gas and electricity prices, because of the fact that we're so reliant on the energy that comes, the energy that comes from Russia. Yep. And Ukraine is obviously a big exporter of grain as well. Yeah. And so there's all of these sort of things has just meant that prices have skyrocketed, and that's where we are.
Wow, it's a combination of everything.
Yeah, it's
right?
like the perfect storm, like the movie. You know,
Yes.
the big wave.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just,
Everything comes all at once.
Yeah,
A bit of a tsunami of sort of catastrophes which lead into this crisis right now, and I guess it's all coming home to everybody. Everybody's got feeling that pinch right now.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem, is that, you know, as human beings, and I think there's a lot of behaviour in reaction to this.
Yeah.
First and foremost, it's, you know, when you're used to a good thing and then suddenly the prospect of, okay, well, maybe, you know, going to have to cut back on those, like the luxuries,
yes,
or the things that aren't necessary. That's hard for human beings to take. We're not very good at that.
Yeah.
And I think as society as well, and I'm just going to put a caveat. When I'm talking about sort of like middle of the road people that can generally afford, you know, going away on ziyarats, holidays, you know, they can celebrate Eid and buy presents, etc. There are obviously members of society that have not fared very well during the last few years.
Of course.
And they're going to really suffer, and they need real help, and support. But generally, you know, let's just take me and you, for example. You know, we'd go out, we'd eat freely, we'd you know, have takeaways, we'd buy clothes, we'd go shopping, ziyarats and stuff like that. We become very accustomed to a very cushy life.
Yeah,
you know, and so suddenly if someone said, well, you're not going to go on holiday for the next year or 2 years, you know, you're not going to take to that, you know, very well. But at the same time, that's quite a privilege. And I think that a lot of us forget, you know, what a privileged situation we're in by being, you know, in a country where we've got, you know, healthcare, we live in peace and comfort a lot of the time. And it's just maybe reframing how we look at, you know, this tightening of the belt, which, you know, you speak to our parents and our grandparents, they went through these sort of things all the time.
Definitely.
It's like, so, you know, whilst it's going to be difficult, we're going to have to navigate choppy waters. You know, I think first and foremost, just sort of being a bit thankful puts you in a better place to then go and attack this.
Definitely.
So yeah, that's...
It's like changing that attitude to that, to have a bit more gratitude. You know, you still got the roof over your head, you still got a bed to sleep in at night, you've still got running water. So all the small things that we need to take for granted. And like you said, these are added bonuses. Going on a holiday, being able to buy maybe some new clothes, or buy that extra thing in the shopping basket, or even go on, you know, on a ziyarah trip or something. So I like what you said there, tightening the belt. That's a phrase I know my mother would say. Yeah, definitely.
I think we've grown up, and especially that, you know, parents coming from like East Africa and places like that, where they had it tough growing up, you know, and so there were times when then, you know, they probably wouldn't have eaten, you know, growing up. And especially like, you know, when I think my parents coming to this country, my dad studying, working 3-4 jobs, hustling, you know, sometimes, you know, missing meals and this and that, and
crazy.
So it's like, okay, do you know, we need to reframe this, put it into perspective. It's gonna hurt, and like I said, there's going to be elements of society that are going to really feel it, and we've got to be there to support them. And hopefully, like, the government can support them, although, you know, that's not always been the case.
Not always been the case.
Not always been the case. But we're going to have to make adjustments to our lives, me included, and how we do that, I think, will be a big factor in how we come out at the end of this. You know, whether it's going to be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, I don't know. We can't sort of predict.
You can't predict it, can you?
No,
definitely not. I mean, dear viewers, we're blessed to have Brother with us today. The phone lines are open, and of course, if you have any burning questions, maybe Brother can give you some sort of insight or some sort of help or support. Obviously, we can't give you financial advice per se, but we could give you a bit of guidance through tonight's show. So the number will be appearing on your screen, inshallah, throughout the course of the show. Do feel free to give us a call, and we'll try our very best to assist in whatever way we can. So the situation really is worsening, and you can't predict whether we're going to go into a global recession. But, you know, I like the terminology that you use. We're going through a period of low growth. Is that what you said?
So, yeah, so again, you know, we can get caught up. I think the first thing in combating this is switch off the news.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to control, you know, your own emotion and how you react to events. And the news isn't our friend. Because, you know, they've got clicks and advertising, and anything that can sort of, you know, get eyeballs on screens is what they're after.
Of course.
And so negativity sells, and so the shock headlines will always be the ones that they put out. They're not going to put out positive news.
No.
So, you know, global recession, this is the worst since the Great Depression, and all of the, you know, billions wiped off the stock market. You're going to hear all of these things, and they're just meant to, you know, sensationalize it and scaremonger. Look, it is bad, but, you know, consuming news, you know, 24 hours a day is not going to be good for your mental well-being, and isn't going to change anything. So I think first and foremost, with anything financial, it's kind of like, you know, just turn off the news. It's not going to help you. And then sort of, you know, words like recession and stuff like that are obviously there as well, meant to just label a period where we've got negative growth.
Yeah.
So, you know, negative growth, okay, fair enough. That has consequences, no doubt. But, you know, global recession sounds
Sounds very scary, right?
Sounds
it brings
very scary.
fear into people.
Yeah, it does, and fear makes people do silly things and panic and all sorts. But, you know, we can do things that are in our control, and I guess maybe we just touch upon a few of those. I think in terms of when I deal with clients in my practice around building wealth, you know, there's different layers of the cake, so to speak, but the base layer is always kind of knowing your numbers. Call it the foundational level. Yeah, before you embark upon building wealth, you've got to know your numbers, and in this sort of cost of living crisis, as we're calling it, and even that is probably sensationalizing as well. It's just like, but, you know, knowing exactly what's coming in and out of your household.
Yeah.
So the way to do that is to create like an effective budget. Now, people don't like the word budget. It's a very it's not a very sexy word. It's like people, don't want a budget, don't want to be told what to spend.
What could we call it instead of
budget? Like a spending plan.
A spending plan.
Yeah, so a spending plan should give you freedom, should also give you a spotlight on your affairs, and then you can go and make educated decisions around where you spend your money.
Fantastic.
So the way that I always say that you should do this is, and the tech is there to help us, but just pulling up a spreadsheet and listing your household net income. So that's everything that you get after tax from any salaries.
So anything coming into the house, anything, finances.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, if you get paid, you know, £1,500 from your job, you know, that's one. If you get any benefits, that could be another. If you're fortunate and you have rental income, you know, that would be another source of income. You might get child benefit and stuff like that. So your total household income, and let's say, you know, after tax, you know, you've got £3,000 coming in. So whack that down, and then meticulously go through your bank statements, your credit cards, anything that you use to pay out money, and start itemizing, you know, what you've spent over the last 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you'll start to build up a picture of where your money is going, and you've got to be ruthless with this. And you know, if you pay with cash, then you've got to account for it. But you need to get a true cost of your lifestyle. But not only the things that happen monthly, because where people get tripped up is, right, they know that their direct debits, like their Sky, their gas, water, electric, all of those things, the mortgage, the rent, that come out monthly. But then Eid will come around, and suddenly you've got like 10 cousins and nephews and nieces to buy presents for.
Yes, exactly.
And you know, 20 quid a pop, you know, that could be easily 200, 300 quid. You order, you know, you've got some more like guests coming round, so your shopping bill goes up. And then you want to buy something new, etc. And Eid ends up being, you know, 500-600 quid that month. Quite easily. Now, if you haven't budgeted for that throughout the year, when that comes out, you might be like, okay, well, I'm not going to miss out on Eid, so I'll whack it on a credit card. And then you're in that trap because you haven't got the money to pay it off, because you haven't, you know, and so that spiral. So really getting a grasp of, you know, even like car maintenance, you know, that comes around every year. You might need to change like tyres or whatever, you know, service. And if you haven't budgeted it for it, most of us, you know, wouldn't have planned and have like 300-400 quid in a car account to go and pay for that. And
would that be kind of classed as like a contingency fund? Would you say something like that?
So an emergency fund is separate. This is just having a separate pot for the things that come round like once a year that you don't want to be, you know, surprised by when they do, but you know that they're coming. It's not, you know, Eid is going to come round.
Of course, it's going to happen, right?
It's going to happen.
Birthdays
and stuff like that. So you need to factor that into your spending plan and say, right, okay, well, how much do I need to actually be putting away each month? And then you're in a better position to see, right, okay, have I got more coming in than going out, or is it pretty tight, or actually is it the other way and I'm spending more, in which case, right, well, where are you getting that extra money from? And if it's credit cards, then that's an issue that you know, needs to be addressed. But just knowing, and a lot of people I meet don't know, and they're scared to know because no one really likes to talk about money. It's a bit of a taboo.
It's a bit of a taboo. I guess it's quite difficult to do something like this in terms of, you know, firstly putting the energy into doing something like this. It almost takes that bit of bravery to kind of step over that line, and then, you know, actually some people may not know how to utilize this. So you breaking it down in a very simplistic way really does help. Say, for instance, I'm sorry to play devil's advocate here. I've done this, got this spreadsheet on there. I'm in negative. You know, I've got, I don't know, a few £100 where I don't know where it's coming from, but I'm in negative. I may be putting it on the credit card. I may be doing payday loans and things like that. What could you tell somebody like that? What would you say or guide somebody in that way?
So again, so everyone's circumstances are individual. And this is the thing, is that sometimes we might lie to ourselves. And so this is like an exercise that if you're going to do it on your own, or you're going to, I would say you do it as a couple if you're married, definitely. But you do it in a way where, first of all, you don't make any judgment, because human beings, we're really good at just beating ourselves, and then that means that you probably won't do it. So listen, everyone makes mistakes. You might think you're bad with money. Your parents might have not taught you about money. I mean, there will be all of these sort of things jabbering around. None of them are going to help you. So you kind of just got to say, right, I'm going to do it and give it a good shot. And there's loads of stuff on YouTube and online to help with budgeting. There's so much. People can sort of reach out and speak to me and the other finance professionals. But essentially, if you were thinking, oh, this is not good, you've got to be ruthless and look at your expenditure and say, what is not necessary? And when I mean what is not necessary, the only things that truly are necessary are putting a roof over your head, getting to work, so that's your modes of transport. But then again, you know, how expensive is your mode of transport? You know, you don't need to be, you've got to be, you've got to be realistic with that. Keeping your house warm, well lit, and paying any debts that might mean that you get into trouble if you don't repay them, and then feeding you and your family. Outside of that, you don't really need anything else. Those are your basics, right?
So you're looking at 5, 6 kind of core things that really you can look at, and then it's a process of elimination. I would suggest then that you've got to then say, okay, I don't need to go and do this. I don't need to go on this outing. I'm spending cash here. Do I need to buy so much of X, Y, or Z? So being ruthless, again, it's really, really important.
And especially at this point in time, to know how much wiggle room there is. So it's a good exercise to actually say, right, look, if things got really bad, so people on mortgages, for example, so what I'm telling a lot of people is go and find a mortgage calculator if you've got a mortgage. Google mortgage calculator. I think there's one on the BBC website. There's a mortgage calculator if you just Google it. And put in your mortgage balance and how long left you've got on your mortgage. So it could be 20 years, 25 years, whatever. And then play around with the interest rate. Because if you're on a very low interest rate deal at the moment, the chances are you fixed for a certain period of time. And within the next year, if you're coming off that rate, you might now, from being on 1.5%, 2%, you might be on 4.5%, 5%, maybe 6%.
Not more,
So what you need to do is you need to run like what I'd call a disaster scenario. Where you've done your main budget, and so you've got a list of, right, this is my outgoings, and then if you could split them up into the needs and wants, you know, so that you've got a bit of a differentiation between the two categories, and then say, right, if my mortgage, according to this calculator, went up, you know, to a 5% rate, that means that mortgage now, instead of £1,000, is going to be £1,600 a month. Right, plug that 1,600 and see where you're at, because now you're doing disaster scenario. Okay, and you can do the same with like your gas and electric. We're really lucky at the moment. I say lucky, but you know, the government stepped in and gave us this cap
Yes.
on the cost of our gas and electric, and we're also getting £400 back from the government or through our energy provider spread over 6 months. So we're getting about £66 pounds, yeah. So everyone's seeing that come off their bill. That's going to end in April.
Yep.
And there's an announcement on Thursday. The Chancellor's doing his what's known as his budget statement coming out on Thursday, where he's going to announce all of the cuts and the tax rises and everything that needs to happen. And I'm sure we might hear more about maybe the situation going forward. Whereas we were told by Liz Truss, you know, when she was in power, that we're going to freeze it for 2 years. So we're going to have 2 winters of, you know, this kind of capped energy rate, which now, you know, the new Chancellor says no. So you've got to be thinking, well, next winter my bills could be a lot higher than they are this.
That's right.
And it's not been that cold so far as well.
No.
So we've been quite
UK, we've had really good
yeah.
weather.
So we've been lucky that we're not like, we haven't had to crank up the heating. So again, in your disaster scenario, you've got to factor in, well, what happens if the energy bills go up a bit more?
Yeah.
You know, so factor in another 20 or 30% on top of what you're paying. Yeah, and take away that 66 quid that they've given you, and see, okay, what are my bills now? And now you're starting to, you know, it is a bit scary because it's like, you know, crikey, where am I going to find an extra £800,000-900,000 a month?
Yes.
You know, but you're going to have to look and say, right, you know, am I going on holidays? Am I buying, you know, expensive clothes? You know, going out for meals and stuff like that. And there's no shame in having to economise.
No, definitely.
Like, I think it's, you know,
I mean, it's part of the teachings of the Ahlulbayt.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, if we look at the life of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, you know, they lived according to what they had in terms of what money they had in their hand. They wouldn't even dream about going out to ask for money or to borrow or to beg for money to be able to survive.
Yeah.
And if it was just a few grains of bread that they were eating and a couple of candles within their houses to keep them warm, they adjusted accordingly.
That's it.
And as Shia of Ali, we should be following in the footsteps of the Ahlulbayt. So this is something that you're saying which is very modern, but it is relatable in terms of our madhab and the way that we should practice.
There's numerous hadith about, you know, the goodness in economising, and this might be a period where we've all got to just economise and be a bit, you know, bit more careful and a bit more savvy with the way we spend. So hopefully those are a couple of things that would be really useful.
Yes.
But the thing is, it takes a bit of effort.
That's right.
And it takes a bit of time, and you can't really do it at the end of a hard day at work, because who wants to look through their bank statements and numbers, etc. It's almost like you've got to be fresh. You've got to say, right, we're going to take 2 hours out. We might even go to a coffee shop or whatever, you know, and
or make the coffee.
Or make the coffee at home.
Rather than spending the money.
But just do something, you know.
True.
And the thing is that, you know, even just coming to the coffee thing, right? So when you do have a spending plan, so like just in our example, we have like date night money.
Okay.
Yeah. So me and my wife put aside a certain amount of money every month that we would use to go out on a date. You know, so we know that, okay, well, this is our budget and we'll go out for a restaurant. Now we can go and blow it all on one night and go to a really fancy place, or we could make it last and do two or three.
2 or 3, yeah.
So again, with everyone's spending plan, it's yours according to your means and your circumstances. So you decide where your money goes, but it's about being intentional. Another Islamic principle about we've got to be intentional with our money and think of it as like, you know, we're putting these pounds out to work in the world, like they're serving a purpose. We've got to be accountable for every, you know, the hisab of every pound, rather than it just being, you know, frittered away.
Yeah, exactly. That's brilliant. I mean, you know, we had a show a few weeks back with Sayyid Jafar Malani, and intention leads to mindset. So it's about your mindset towards it and having the intention to actually sit down and look at this foundation, as you called it, the bottom part of the layer cake, is fundamental, really. Because how can you see any growth of the cake if you're not doing the basics? And that's where it all starts from.
You can't put more tiers on top without that. So, yeah, I guess, I mean, does that cover off the first sort of level. Is there anything you want to expand on?
No, I just like the mindset. I mean, in terms of what you were saying there, you've accounted for your date night, which is, you know, even...
I just said that so that my wife, if she watches, just like...
God bless your wife.
Yeah.
And he's going to take you out for a date, of course, definitely. But this is, you know, that just shows that you're accounting for everything. And you're looking at everything, and you're being truthful, and you're being very honest. Again, it's very difficult to do, it's very hard to do.
Yeah.
But looking things to the nth degree, and then cutting your cloth accordingly.
That's it.
Really important.
And it's hard because, you know, we're living in an age where everyone wants the pound that's in your pocket.
Yes.
The marketing budgets of these big companies that are enormous, and the amount of money that they're investing in, like the psychology of human behaviour around spending is like they've got departments and they've got people analysing like your every move online. They know exactly when to target you, how to target you, when you're most vulnerable. You know, and so you're fighting a massive enemy when it comes to trying to keep money in your pocket as opposed to theirs.
Yes.
And the thing is, nowadays, it's become so easy to spend. So that's part of the problem. So you go back a couple of generations ago, and they wouldn't have had like taps and one-click Amazon Prime, you know, and all of this stuff that makes it so easy to just get things by midnight.
Yeah, of course.
You know, so it's a completely different society because of the fact that we don't use as much cash. We're very frictionless in our transactions, so that makes it easier to spend, and we don't feel the pinch. You know, whereas if you know, I always used to remember when we used to get Eid money, and then you'd want to go and buy some sweets, and if it was only like £1, and you'd have to break like a note, you'd kind of like, I'll allow it. I'm not going to break that. I'm not going to break a note for like some sweets. So cash has that ability to make us think about.
Powerful, right?
It's very powerful.
It's a visual thing. It's a conceptual thing that you're holding and you feel it, but you don't really see. You just see numbers or whatever, and it doesn't really materialise.
And just think about the transaction. Like if you were the shopkeeper and I was paying with cash, I give you my cash in return for the good.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So there's I'm giving you something. You're giving me.
It's a very physical thing.
It's a very physical. So it triggers something in the brain, or there's an exchange taking place. But if you just presented me a screen and all I do was tap.
Yes.
Yeah. So nothing's left in my hand.
No.
I've not given you anything. I've just tapped and I've put that back in my pocket. It doesn't even feel like I've spent or bought anything. And you've given me the goods.
Yeah.
You know, or they've arrived at my house. So this frictionless society is not geared up for helping us manage our spending, and we've got to understand that. So we're in a extremely difficult period.
Yes.
And so, you know, there are apps that can help you with budgeting and spending.
I'm just going to interrupt you. We've got a caller on the line.
All right, let's go.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum, dear caller. Welcome to the live show.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I just wanted to say all the topics that you are saying is great. But being a Muslim, are we not supposed to talk about usury? As in, for example, is it riba or riba? I don't know how to say it.
Riba, so interest.
So with riba, interest, is that not an important thing as Muslims that we should learn that because it's exploiting, like if when we give more and give to people that want interest, is that not the cause of all humanity's problems and resources, businesses where people get cheated and exploited, and that causes a lot of problems, and that's why then maybe the corruption starts and people that have more money to take from you, that's where the bad stuff happens.
It's a great question, actually, in terms of riba. I know as Muslims, if I lent...
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for your call. We'll try to do our best to answer that, although we're not scholars in that respect. But if I was to lend you some money, I couldn't ask for my money back on top with interest. We're not allowed to ask for interest on anything that I would lend a person in terms of riba. But the sister's obviously saying, is this not the cause of all these problems? Interest rates we've touched on, how big interest rates are right now.
Do you know what? It's not a topic that I think I'm qualified to speak on in terms of the jurisprudential aspect of it. Obviously, we get guidance from the Maraja around, you know, taking mortgages, for example.
Yes.
That seems to be perfectly acceptable.
Yes.
You know, in our madhab, you know, to buy your property through, you know, finance.
Yes.
I know that there's sort of other sort of Sharia compliant kind of schemes that are available. But yeah, in terms of, I think, extortionate interest, which is, you know, preying on the weak and vulnerable, like the payday loans and things like that. I think, I mean, that's clearly absolutely abhorrent from a perspective of, you know, these are like £1,000% per annum interest rates.
Unethical,
it's
isn't it?
unethical, and it's lending money with just the sole aim of, you know, making money and exploitation. So I think there's obviously a problem there,
big time.
and how that obviously ripples through society is, you know, it cripples people and it ruins them, because again, these people prey on the weak and vulnerable through their marketing, through this, etc.
Of course.
And people that are in that situation sometimes turn to these sort of methods of, you know, raising cash, which is unfortunate. So, yeah, but probably too big a topic.
It was a great question.
Yeah.
And we do appreciate you, caller, for ringing in and asking us that. Maybe we can pick that up with a scholar in a later show or something along those lines. But it's something to definitely bear in mind before you go into any kind of legal agreement. Make sure that you're maybe going into a fixed term agreement, and you know the interest that's being paid and the term of the agreement as well.
Yeah. But actually, it's a good segue into the second layer.
Yes, please. Let's move into that.
Which is about clearing bad debt.
Yes.
Okay, so, you know, there is actually a layer before that, which is building up an emergency fund. So an emergency fund is that contingency, that rainy day. If my boiler broke down, or if I lost my job, you know, what have I got to fall back on? You know, the car breaks down. Because if you don't have a contingency fund, or an emergency fund, and we say 3 to 6 months of your expenditure, it should be in an emergency fund that you just don't touch. It's not meant for going on holiday or buying, you know, a new set of golf clubs. In my situation, it's not for that kind of stuff. It's literally just parked away for that rainy day.
3 to 6 months, roughly.
Yeah, and again, it depends how vulnerable you are. If you're self-employed and you lost your livelihood, then, you know, you'd be in real bad shape. Whereas, you know, if you're employed, you might get some benefits from your employer if you're off sick, or you know, find a new job, etc. But at least £1,000 is recommended, highly recommended. If you can't do 1,000, do 500, but get something.
Get something there.
Because otherwise, you turn to credit cards and payday loans to fix those things, especially if they're like urgent, like. You've got no heating, well, you've got to fix your boiler. It's not like something you can say, I can put that off until I get paid or save up. So you've got to have those kind of, that buffer. And so you had a question, I think. Yeah,
I was just going to go a little bit further back in terms of, you know, the TAP society, the you know, the pays that you got on your phones. Would you recommend actually withdrawing some of this money as cash? So some of your, you know, spare money that you have, some of your emergency funds, keep that as cash, obviously tuck it away somewhere, or
out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, you can. What can be quite a good way of doing it is opening an account, or let's say most of us have a few bank accounts.
Yes.
We've built them up over the years. You know, we opened an account here because they gave a free cuddly toy when we were younger and all of that sort of stuff. So you might have these older.
We're the same generation.
Yeah.
I've got a few cuddly toys.
I was going to say when you're you know, you're a youngster, but even growing up now, it's easy to open, you know, different bank accounts if your credit's good. So I would say that the emergency fund, you whack into an account that you don't really have online access to, or, you know, it's going to involve a bit more hassle. Like maybe you've got to phone up to take it out. You can't just walk into the branch and withdraw it. But generally, if it's not available on your phone, that will be a good start.
It's harder to get access to that money.
So rather than pulling the money out and putting it in your house, and
you might have to actually go to the bank and queue up, and the old school way of doing things.
The old school, just a bit of friction, and put that away.
Great idea.
And that's a great start, because generally you're going to think twice about you know, using that unless it was a die-hard emergency.
Yes.
So definitely separate that money is a great shout. And then when it comes to moving on to the debt, it's all about once you know your numbers,
Yeah.
now if there is a little bit of spare, or if you've identified where you're spending money that's not necessary,
Yeah.
and you've got credit cards that you're paying interest on, that's money that you're wasting.
True.
So there's good and bad debt. You know, good debt is the debt that's kind of working for you. So you might have borrowed money to invest in a business, and obviously that business is with the aim of making your money grow and to bring you barakah, you know. So you financed, you know, a good thing. Buying a property, again, for you to live in, but maybe for you to invest and then rent out and receive rental income. So those would be considered good types of debt. But the bad debt is the ones that we're sort of focusing on: the credit cards, the you know, the store catalogue, you know, and all of those sort of things that we shouldn't really be.
And some of these high interest ones that we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Payday loans as well. So again, once you've identified that, okay, there's a little bit of spare, maybe it's only 50 quid, you know, whatever it is, you can start putting that towards your debt, you know, and
getting the balance down.
And not looking at it and thinking, oh my God, like that's £3,000, you know, how am I ever going to do that? Just start chipping away. And there's a couple of methods. There's one called the debt snowball. Okay. And so what you should do is, let's say you've got 3 or 4 cards, maybe a couple of personal loans or whatever. List them in the value that's outstanding, with the one with the lowest value first.
The lowest value.
So let's say you've got a credit card that's only got £200, and then you've got another credit card that's got 400, and then another one that's got 1,000. List them according to the smallest value first, ignoring the interest rate. Okay, which is a bit counterintuitive, because people say, well, pay off the one which has got the highest interest rate first.
Yes.
Which does make financial sense. And if you want to do it that way, you can. I'm not saying that that is wrong.
Of course.
But what they've done some studies, and what they've said is actually the motivation to clear debt gathers pace as you get more wins. So if you pay off the smallest one first, which you could probably do quicker, then the money that was going towards that one,
you then put into another one.
You then put into the next one, and then you pay that one off a little bit quicker, because then you've got the existing money and the money from that one, and it's like a snowball. Then when that one's cleared,
I see the
but
example.
also what they've said is that you're much more motivated to attack it, because once you get that good feeling of, you know, like when
the endorphins, right?
Yeah, like, you know, when we were younger, we'd borrow money off a mate, and it would be like, oh, you didn't want to see them. You know, you'd
hide around the corner.
You'd hide around the corner. You'd avoid them. You wouldn't go out. But at least, you know, once you paid them off, like,
you feel good.
You feel good. Yeah, you did something good. And so it's the same with paying off these debts. Is that it's just getting going, and it's easier to see a quick win, and paying something small off, even though if it might be a lower interest rate, and so that's a good way of getting started with the debt. And
Can we just come in there? I paid off that one credit card. Do I then cut it up? Cancel the account? Yeah, definitely. Does that kind of thing help your credit rating? I know we're not trying to give advice, but you know, you've paid off a debt, you've cleared it. Cut it up, don't use it, cancel the account. So we stop, temptation's not there for you to spend again.
Listen, you've got to be in the position of knowing that you can control yourself, and if you can't then you know yourself better. And if it's going to be a problem, I mean, there's so many people that I come across that have cleared a balance, and then they get a promotional offer, and the balance comes back, or you know, you've consolidated it, and then you've spent again. It's usually a spending problem. Rather, you know, more than anything else when it comes to these sort of things. So you got to be mindful, and like you said, cut them up. You don't need a credit card. Yes, you know, using a credit card responsibly can help improve your credit, but you know, unless you're in that state where you're trying to, you know, buy a house and you need to build your credit up, but you can just check your credit rating, and then make a decision based on that, and maybe just keep one that you use and that you pay off at the end of every month.
Okay, so
clearing it straight away if you do want to operate a credit card, but you've got others. But yeah, I'd strongly urge that if you've got a lot of balances, then maybe just stick to cash or your debit card.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, I think that's great advice. So you're chipping away at the debt, the bad debt, the credit cards, one at a time, the store cards, the payday loans, the credit cards, and the snowball effect. You mentioned as you were explaining that there's another way of doing it,
Which would just be looking at what you're paying the most interest on.
Okay.
So if you've got something that's at like 25% interest rate and something that's at 5% interest rate,
Yeah.
common sense would be you're paying more interest on the 25% one, so just attack that.
Yeah.
If you feel confident and you think that it's not going to get disheartening, you know, but that could be that might be quite a large debt. It might take you years to do that.
True.
Especially at the moment when things are tight and things are a bit squeezed. Whereas if you paid off the small one, you might be like, yeah, do you know what? I'm going to cut some more stuff out of here and put it towards it because I kind of want to get rid of that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you'll do it.
It's motivation, isn't it?
Motivation, yeah.
So kind of change your mindset, looking at what you're doing. So we've covered some amazing things. You know what question I have?
Yeah, go for it.
Kind of something from myself.
Yeah.
Can assets grow during an economic downturn? So we're in this downturn right now. Is there things that can fluctuate and grow?
Yeah, I mean, probably something that I would have covered off, but we can talk about it now. So yeah, so let's say you're out of debt, and things are good. You've got your emergency fund, and you've got like a surplus.
Yeah.
So most people will then focus on making sure that they're protected.
Okay.
So when we say protected, it's like, God forbid if something happened to you and you were no longer around, so let's say you passed away.
So life insurance.
Life insurance to protect your family, but also income protection to cover your income if you can't work, because you know if you can't work, you're as good as dead.
Yes,
you know, economically.
Economically, yes.
For a certain period of time. So making sure that you're covered there. So once you've got that covered, then I would say then you start looking to build wealth and grow your money, because we do need to think about one day when we're going to be too knackered to work.
True.
Yeah. Or there might be other pursuits that you want to give back more and give your time to other causes.
Yes.
Well, you can't do that if you're still dependent on turning up to work at 9 o'clock every day. Yeah. So there is a need to make our money grow. And so that would usually happen through various vehicles. One of them is, if you're in an employed role, is through your workplace pension.
Yes.
Okay, so that's just, think of that as a pot of money that you're putting some money into and your employer is putting some money into.
Yeah.
It's invested and it will grow, and you know in the future you'll have a bigger pot to draw down on. Now, what that pot is invested in is going to determine by how much it grows.
Yes.
So traditionally, if we're talking about investments, there's two sort of stable, not stable as in stable, but as in that everyone knows about.
Yes.
Which is businesses and bricks.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to really just make it very simple. You can invest in bricks, and we all know property. We love it. Yeah,
Yep.
we love it because we can touch it, feel it.
Yes,
you know, sometimes
very
even
tangible.
smell it if there's damp.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, if there's damp in the property.
When you go home tonight, smell the front door.
So we invest in property, and let's ignore our home for the time being. We invest in property because generally property values go up.
Yes.
So it gives you a rising value, capital value, but also you get an income from that property, and usually that income would rise as well because rents go up.
Yes.
So that meets a definition of getting a total return from the rise in value and the rise in income.
Yeah.
Now, in a downturn, the value might drop temporarily, but you'd expect it to maybe pick up later down the line. And generally, rents, you'd expect them to hold, and especially at the moment, you'd expect them to go up.
Yes.
So property in a downturn could still be a really good investment because actually prices might fall, so it allows you to buy it cheaper.
Yeah.
And like with anything, when assets are on sale, well, that's a great time to buy them.
True.
You know, so, you know, if Curry's had a sale on at the moment and there was like, you know, TVs at half price, even though it's the cost of living crisis, we'd all be down to Curry's to buy a new TV for the World Cup especially. Yeah,
There you go.
So you've got property and then you've got businesses. So just looking at it, you know, let's say there's a shop down the road, chicken shop, you know, I might invest in that because it's got loads of clients and it's popular and there's always a queue out the door, etc. And I might want to buy a share in that business because one day when he goes to sell it, you know, to Pepe's maybe or someone else, like he's going to get a windfall, you know, in that respect, and I've got a share of that property, so that business,
yeah.
so I'll gain from that. But he's also going to be making profits every year,
Yeah.
which as a shareholder, he's going to have to give me some of those.
Is it dividends?
Yeah, dividends, yeah. So he's going to give me some of the profits. This is the same concept when it comes to you investing your money through something like a pension or an ISA.
Okay.
You're just invested in thousands of businesses globally,
Right.
that are the biggest businesses on the planet, with the most intelligent CEOs, leaders, this, that, the other. I'm not talking about their moral conduct here, I'm just talking about their commercial,
Of course.
and they're running these big businesses that are aimed at providing goods and services to human beings. So as long as there's human beings on the planet who are willing to buy goods and services, you know, mobile phones, laptops, TVs, cameras, all of these things around us, we're investing in those companies, and so our money is being put to work in these companies by owning a share of them.
Yeah.
And then over the years, and we're looking at decades, those companies will go up in value.
Yeah.
Historically, that's what we know. Those companies go up in value.
Increase,
yeah. But there will be a few that get annihilated, but that's fine, because we haven't just invested in the chicken shop down the road.
No.
We've invested in thousands of global companies.
Yes.
So a few of them going bust. Now, times like this, when everyone's a bit spooked, the economic climate's a bit uncertain, the stock market, which is a collection of these businesses, tends to drop in value temporarily. So we'll see that the value dropped, and people will be worried. Billions have been wiped off the stock market. The news outlets will, you know, shout about. You'll see the value of your funds have gone down, but actually, think of it as these companies are now on sale, just like the property was on sale, because, you know, it's a downturn and prices might fall. The prices of buying these companies has also fallen. So actually, it's a good time to invest and get a bargain, get more bang for your buck.
More bang for your buck.
Yeah,
Lovely.
so that would be the answer to that question, in terms of, this is the time where actually people do make money.
Do make money, of course, definitely. Thank you for that. I really appreciate, you know, sorry for interrupting the layer cake that we're building there. Quite interestingly, you know, we touched really early on about the vulnerable, the elderly in our community, the ones that are really worried about the rising gas prices. I'm just going to pause because we have another caller on the line.
All right, let's go.
Assalamu alaikum, dear caller. Welcome to the live show.
Wa alaikum salam. This is Bilal from London.
Thank you for calling, Bilal. And how can we help you?
Okay, I have a small number of, I have a portfolio of some properties, about half a dozen. And what's the best way to save them from the taxman when I go into the next world?
From the taxman when you go to the next world. Okay, we'll see whether we can give some sort of guidance. So Brother Bilal has just called in, obviously. He's got a small portfolio of properties. And then he's asking about maybe future planning to save the properties from the taxman.
So inheritance tax.
Inheritance tax,
Maybe.
Is there any kind of guidance you might be able to provide, Bilal? And Bilal, thank you for calling. It's a really good question. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a bit of a tricky question, but just to put it into perspective for the listeners. So when we pass away, after all the years of paying various taxes, kind of one of the biggest taxes of them all is inheritance tax, which is 40% of your estate.
It's a lot.
Once it's reached a certain threshold. So there's a threshold up to which you don't pay any inheritance tax, and above that, then you would pay the 40%. Now, there's various ways that you can avoid paying tax. The first is spend it all. Go to your grave with nothing, and then you won't pay any tax.
Of course.
You can start gifting.
Gifting.
Yeah, so you could gift money away, and there are certain allowances around gifting. He's spoken about property, so there's different rules in regards to property, and it gets quite complicated. It's not going to be possible to answer that question, but I think it's good just to touch upon.
Yeah, definitely.
That it is a strategy that you need to adopt and follow through over a number of years in order to take advantage of the legislation that allows you to gift money so that it doesn't remain part of your estate. So that there are gifting rules that apply. So you could gift away all of your properties to your children. The problem is they're considered what's known as a potentially exempt transfer. So they could potentially be outside of your estate, but you'd have to survive 7 years from making the gift before that asset falls outside of your estate. Okay. So it's not a case of that.
There's rules to it.
Yeah, there's rules to it. So you wouldn't be able to, suddenly just pass over your property. But also the thing to remember is when you pass an asset to someone else, you give up control.
Yeah.
So, that's why it's really important to kind of know what the objective is. Is it about saving tax? Is it about having control? What about in your later on in your life? Now there are certain trusts that can be used to try and help mitigate some inheritance tax, but again, it's quite a complex area, and there's no one size fits all answer.
We do have another caller on the line, but Bilal, I hope that helps, inshallah ta'ala. Salamu alaikum, caller. Welcome to the live show.
Alaikum salam. I'd like to ask about pension. I've got a couple of years left, and I haven't done much putting in the pot for pension because of lack of funds. What's the best way to top it up if you can do it now?
So what type of pension is this? Is this a work pension?
Yeah, work pension.
Great.
Okay. So again,
and because bearing in mind that I've brought up children and I didn't put any pension.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Fine.
That's a great question. Thank you, sister.
Okay, thank you. So just to touch upon that, what the sister's asking about is her workplace pension. Would be useful to bring in the state pension, which
we can cover both.
Which would be good to cover. So let me just cover off the state pension, which is an entitlement to everyone in the UK when they reach state pension age, which is going to be moving further and further away. So it's going to be 68, and then it'll probably move to 70 because as the government runs out of money, are they going to be able to provide, the old age pension? But the way that you are eligible for a pension is based on what's known as qualifying years.
Okay.
So a qualifying year is where you've paid a certain amount of national insurance in that year, or you've been given a credit because you've either been a carer or you've been bringing up children up until a certain age. I think it's to the age of 12 or 13 that you get the credit.
Yeah.
Now 35 qualifying years gets you the full state pension.
Okay.
Which the equivalent in today's terms is about £9,600 would be the full state pension. Now this is a vital benefit because the state pension is inflation proof.
Yes.
So as things get more expensive, you'd obviously want your income to go up.
Yes.
And the state pension does do that. Okay, so that's a great benefit. So for anyone that's listening who might be approaching that time of life, so in their 50s or 60s, it would be good to get a state pension forecast. Go to gov.uk or just Google state pension forecast, put in your details and see how many years you've already got.
Okay.
Because then you'll be able to say, right, okay, I've got like 25 years and I've got 10 years of work left, so I know that I'll get to my 35.
Yes.
But if you've only got, let's say, 20 years and you're kind of thinking, I wanted to leave work in the next 5 or 6 years, so well, I might get up to 25 or 26, you're going to be short. Now, you can buy back previous years.
Okay.
So you want to look into buying back previous years and making up the shortfall. So that's one thing. For the sister in her situation, well,
We just have 2 minutes left, so I don't mean to cut you into it. So
quickly. So for the sister, you just need to go to your employer and say, look, I'd like to make more contribution. And actually what they might say is, yes, okay, well, you just tell us how much more you want to contribute into your pension. Or if it's a private pension, she can just go straight to the company and say, right, I want to put this much in.
Go direct to the company themselves.
Whoever it is, it could be Aviva or Scottish Widows or Legal and General, whoever it is. But the important thing as well is to check with your employer is that, if I put a little bit extra, do they match it? Because some employers provide a benefit whereby they will make increased pension contributions if you increase yours. So it's like free money.
Yes.
So really valuable to check that out with your
go for
employer.
the first point of call. Speak
Check
to
with
the
your employer. Yeah,
Yeah.
HR will usually give you the answer.
Fantastic, fantastic, so much. I mean, there's so much we could have covered off on this show, and you've been a valuable asset in terms of assets to our viewers and to myself. And I just want to personally thank you for your time. I know you're a very busy guy. If you just want to tell the viewers where can they find you, how can they get in contact with you?
So best place is to, well, if you're on LinkedIn, you know, Shaba Qasim. There's probably not too many Shaba Qasims on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. The company is Lumos Financial. If you go to www.lumosfinancial.com, and you can contact me through the website.
Brilliant. Shaba, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Dear viewers, thank you so much. We hope that you got some benefit out of this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you steadfast. Inshallah, we gave you some great advice tonight. Inshallah ta'ala, make that change that mindset, do the hard work, look at the foundations and look at your costs, and always start from there, inshallah ta'ala. Please join us next week for another riveting show, Ahlulbayt Live, next Tuesday, same time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.